Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Bradley met Samantha one Saturday afternoon at a neighborhood bookstore, the kind with old wooden shelves and the smell of aged paper. He was looking for a technical manual. She was flipping through a novel in the fiction section. Their eyes accidentally met, and her shy smile was enough to make him forget why he'd come in. Bradley was 28, worked as a telecommunications technician, earned a solid salary that let him live comfortably without extravagance. Samantha was 25, a receptionist at a dental office, with a quiet beauty that grew more striking the longer you looked at her. Their relationship started slow, built on home-cooked dinners, Sunday walks in the park, and rented movies on Friday nights. Samantha was sweet, almost too sweet, always agreeing, always trying to please, always avoiding conflict. Bradley found it charming, never realizing that her meekness was the result of years shaped by controlling hands. Dolores was Samantha's mother, a 53-year-old woman who raised her daughter alone. Samantha's father had never been part of the picture, and Dolores turned that absence into bitterness directed entirely at her daughter. Samantha grew up hearing she needed to marry well, to find a man who could give her the life Dolores never had. Every decision went through her mother's filter, every friendship was evaluated. When Bradley entered the story, Dolores immediately saw him as inadequate. The introduction dinner happened 3 months after they started dating. Bradley put in real effort. He brought flowers, wore his best shirt, rehearsed answers about his job and his plans. Dolores showed up with a closed-off expression, greeted him with a cold handshake, and sat like she was being interrogated. Throughout the whole meal, she barely touched her food, replying in monosyllables. When he mentioned his recent promotion with pride, Dolores raised an eyebrow and said technicians were easily replaceable. Bradley swallowed his response and smiled politely. After dinner, when he went to the bathroom, Dolores pulled Samantha into the kitchen. "My daughter deserves someone with a future, not a man who's going to trap her in this mediocre life forever. You've got a pretty face, you could do better. This guy's going to keep you stuck in a small house counting pennies." Samantha listened in silence, eyes welling up, but when Bradley came back and took her hand gently, she made a choice that surprised even herself. They married 8 months later, a small courthouse ceremony followed by a lunch for 30 people. Dolores showed up dressed in black, sat apart, and left before the toast. Samantha cried in the bathroom, but Bradley found her, wiped her tears, and promised they'd build something beautiful together. The first 3 years were genuinely happy. Bradley got promoted to supervisor with a significant raise. They saved together and put down a deposit on a house in a quiet residential neighborhood. It wasn't a mansion, but it was theirs, with a backyard where Samantha planted roses and a porch where they drank coffee on Sundays. They talked about having kids, imagined names, planned their future. Dolores visited every 2 months, leaving a trail of poison behind. She commented on the simple decor, the cheap curtains, the car that was a few years old. She asked if Samantha missed traveling, wearing nicer clothes. Bradley noticed how his wife would grow quiet for days after each visit, Dolores's words slowly fermenting in her mind. It was on a Wednesday night that Dolores called, sounding excited. Samantha answered in the kitchen, and the conversation lasted 40 minutes. When she came back, her eyes looked different. "My mom wants to take me on a trip," she announced. "A luxury resort, her gift. She says we need some time, just the two of us." Bradley saw the hope in her face and didn't question it. "Of course you should go," he said, kissing her forehead. "It'll be good for you two to reconnect." Samantha hugged him gratefully, not realizing she was walking into a trap. The resort was 4 hours away, a 5-star complex with a spa and award-winning restaurants. Samantha was awed, she'd never experienced anything like it. Dolores seemed different, lighter, almost maternal. On the second day, over breakfast on the terrace, a man approached with a confident smile. "Graham," Dolores exclaimed with exaggerated enthusiasm. "What a surprise to run into you here." He was 42, with streaks of gray in his hair, an Italian suit, and a watch that cost more than their car. Dolores explained he was an old friend, a successful businessman, recently divorced. Graham pulled out a chair without being invited and ordered champagne at 9 in the morning. He talked about trips to Europe, a yacht docked along the coast, investments that multiplied fortunes. Samantha listened, mesmerized by the world he represented. Dolores actively joined in, highlighting his wealth. After an hour, she checked her watch and announced she was heading to the spa. "You two stay, get to know each other better," she said, leaving quickly. The following days followed the same pattern. Dolores made excuses to leave them alone. Graham was persistent, not aggressive, but always there, promising worlds. He told Samantha she deserved more, that she was too beautiful to live modestly. By the third night, after dinner fueled by wine and champagne, Samantha called Bradley. He answered happily, asking about the resort. Her voice sounded off, but he blamed it on fatigue. When she hung up, Graham was waiting in the lobby. Dolores called late that night. The conversation lasted an hour. She used every weapon she knew. She spoke of once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, how Bradley would never give her the life she deserved, how Graham was a real man. "Are you going to waste your youth with that technician? Are you going to grow old in that little house? Graham can give you everything you've always wanted." Samantha cried through the whole call, torn between loyalty to her husband and the visceral need for her mother's approval. When she hung up, her hands were shaking. Graham knocked on her door half an hour later. He brought more wine, soft words, seductive promises. Vulnerable, conditioned to please, desperate for the approval her mother was finally offering through this man, Samantha gave in. She spent the night with him. Morning brought brutal clarity. She woke up alone in Graham's bed, he was already gone. She stared at the ceiling and felt sick. What had she done? She ran to the bathroom and threw up. She spent hours in the shower trying to wash herself clean. When she stepped out, she found a message from Dolores asking cheerfully how the night had been. She didn't reply. The flight back was silent torture. Dolores chattered about Graham and future plans. Samantha kept her eyes on the window, the weight of betrayal pressing on her chest. When they landed, there was a message from Bradley saying he was anxious, that he'd missed her terribly. Every word was a knife. Bradley was waiting in the living room when she walked in, wide smile, arms open. Samantha dropped her suitcase and didn't move. He instantly knew something was wrong. She was pale, her eyes swollen, her hands trembling. "What happened?" he asked, stepping closer. Samantha shook her head, tears streaming. Bradley felt his stomach drop. "I need to tell you something," she said, voice breaking. They sat on the couch, him holding her cold hands. Samantha took several deep breaths before starting. She told him about Graham, Dolores's manipulation, the night that destroyed everything. She told him through sobs, begging for forgiveness, but also saying she wanted a divorce. Bradley listened in silence, his face shifting from confusion to pain, then to something colder. When she finished, the silence was deafening. Bradley let go of her hands and walked to the window. He stood with his back to her for long minutes. Samantha kept crying, waiting for the explosion that never came. When he turned around, his expression was a mask of calm. "Let me get this straight," he began slowly. "Your mom planned this trip to push you into another man's arms. You went, slept with him, and now you want a divorce to be with a guy you've known for a week." Samantha nodded. "And that makes sense?" he asked with irony. "You've known this Graham for days. You don't know anything about him beyond what he told you. Are you really willing to throw away 3 years based on promises from a stranger and approval from your mother who hates me?" Samantha repeated the lines she'd practiced. "You deserve someone better. I'm not good enough. Graham can give me the life my mom always wanted." Bradley laughed dryly. "Your mom. Always your mom. You're 30 years old and still let that woman control your life. Didn't you realize she manipulated you? She treated you like merchandise, sold you to whoever offered the most. The words were painful because they were true. Samantha cried harder but didn't argue. Bradley sat in the armchair across from her. If that's what you want, I'll sign the papers. I won't hold you where you don't want to be. But know this, you're making the biggest mistake of your life, and when it falls apart, don't come knocking on my door. The process moved fast. Bradley didn't contest anything except the house. They signed 2 weeks later. Samantha left carrying her suitcases, stepping into a taxi that would take her to Graham's apartment. The following months were about rebuilding for Bradley. He buried himself in work, taking overtime shifts. He sold his wedding band, donated the clothes she left behind, repainted the bedroom. The house slowly became just his. Meanwhile, Samantha's life started cracking. Graham moved her into a temporary apartment while finalizing the purchase of a permanent one. The place was nice, but she noticed he never showed her any paperwork. Trips were postponed, the yacht existed only in stories. Dolores visited, delighted with the husband she'd chosen. 3 months after the divorce, Samantha woke up to urgent knocking at the door. She opened it to find 2 police officers. They asked for Graham. She answered confusedly that he'd left for a meeting. The officers exchanged glances before explaining Graham wasn't a businessman, he was a con artist wanted in 3 states for fraud and deceit. The apartment belonged to his last victim, a widow he'd seduced and robbed. The clothes and watch were bought with cloned credit cards. His investments were collapsed pyramid schemes. Samantha listened in shock. When the officers asked if Graham had left anything behind, she stumbled to the couch. They found little, he left no traces. Before leaving, one officer looked at her with pity. If he comes back, if he ever comes back, call us. And get a lawyer. Some charges might stick to you as an accomplice. Samantha spent hours calling Graham. The number didn't exist anymore. Messages never delivered. Social media profiles vanished. His clothes disappeared from the closet. Their joint account was drained. She was alone, broke, living in an apartment that wasn't hers, possibly facing charges. She called Dolores in panic. Her mother listened to the story and fell silent. Samantha, I invested with Graham too. All my savings. He said he'd multiply it. How much? Samantha asked, fearing the answer. Everything, Dolores replied. I gave him everything I had. The following weeks were a freefall. The apartment owner demanded Samantha move out. With no money, no credit, and no job, she'd quit when Graham promised to support her, she had nowhere to go. Dolores offered one solution, they'd share a tiny room in a cheap boarding house. From a 5-star resort to a cramped room with a shared bathroom. From champagne to rationed meals. Dolores aged years in weeks. The woman who'd mocked Bradley's life now counted coins for bread. Samantha worked as a waitress during the day and a receptionist at night, scraping together cash. Long nights, aching feet, constant regret. One Tuesday, Dolores announced her plan. I'm going to talk to Bradley. He's a good man, I know I was wrong. I'll tell him everything, ask him to take you back. Samantha looked at her with desperate hope and shame. Do you think he'll want me? Dolores wasn't sure, but she had to try. Bradley was at home preparing dinner when the doorbell rang. He opened it to find Dolores. The woman who once looked immaculate now wore wrinkled clothes, unkempt hair, deep shadows under her eyes. For a few seconds, they just looked at each other. Bradley, she began, voice trying to sound steady, I need to talk to you. Curiosity made him step aside. Dolores sat on the couch without being invited. Bradley stayed standing, arms crossed. You need to take my daughter back, she said. I know you must hate me. I planned all of it. I pushed her into that man. But Samantha loves you, she's always loved you. She was too weak to resist my pressure. She needs you now, Bradley. He listened, expression unreadable. When she finished, he let out a dry laugh. It's fascinating. For years you treated me like garbage. Every visit was a festival of criticism and contempt. I was never good enough, my job wasn't respectable, my house wasn't big enough. And now that your plan failed, now that your prince turned out to be a fraud, now I'm supposed to clean up your mess. Dolores tried to interrupt, but he raised his hand. I'm not done. You manipulated your daughter. You used her love and need for approval to destroy her life. You treated Samantha like merchandise, sold her to whoever had the most money. You never thought about the consequences. And now you want me to fix it? Dolores had tears in her eyes. I was wrong. About everything. You were a good husband. Samantha was happy with you. I was blind with bitterness. But she's my daughter. She's suffering so much. Bradley walked to the window, looking at the backyard where Samantha had planted the roses. He stood in silence for minutes. When he turned, his expression was resolute. Do you know what hurt me most? He asked. It wasn't the betrayal, even though it devastated me. It was realizing Samantha chose this. She could have resisted. She could have called me, asked for help, just said no. But she chose to give in to manipulation, believe a stranger's promises, throw away our marriage. She wasn't kidnapped. She was an active participant. But the pressure, Dolores tried. Everyone faces pressure, he cut in. Life is full of pressure. Character shows in how you respond. Samantha showed hers. Dolores stood up, realizing she'd lost. Bradley, please. Just one chance. Let her come talk to you. Bradley shook his head. No. If I took Samantha back now, I'd be saying it's okay to cheat on me, to walk away whenever something better comes along, that I'll just be waiting when things fall apart. What kind of life would that be? Always waiting for the next time she trades me in? No, thank you. So that's it? She asked weakly. You're just going to abandon her? Bradley laughed. I abandoned her? She abandoned me. She signed the divorce papers eager to run into the arms of a con man. She made her choice clearly. Now she has to live with the consequences. Dolores stood there, searching for words, but his gaze was final. She walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned. I destroyed my daughter, didn't I? Bradley looked her in the eyes. No. You gave her the tools to destroy herself. She chose to use them. Dolores left, and Bradley closed the door calmly. He walked back to the kitchen where dinner had cooled, sat down, and ate in silence. The phone rang several times, he ignored the unknown number. 6 months later, Bradley was at a cafe when he saw Samantha. She worked there as a waitress, wearing a simple uniform, hair loosely tied back, dark circles under tired eyes. When she saw him, she froze. Bradley kept his expression neutral, ordered coffee from another employee, and sat far away. He felt her eyes on him several times but didn't look back. When he stood to leave, she intercepted him. Bradley, can I have just a minute? He stopped, looking at her without anger but without warmth. She took advantage of the silence. I know I messed up terribly. I was stupid, weak, let my mom manipulate me and destroy everything good I had. You didn't deserve any of that. Bradley let her finish. Do you know what marked me the most? It wasn't when you confessed the affair. It was afterward, when you repeated that Graham could give you the life your mom always wanted. Not the life you wanted. The life your mom wanted. You never knew what you wanted because you spent your life letting her decide. And when you finally had a chance to choose, you chose to obey her again, even if it meant destroying our marriage. Samantha's tears were falling. I know that now. I'm in therapy, trying to understand my patterns. But it's hard. He nodded with quiet sympathy. I imagine. I hope you find yourself, discover who you are when you're not trying to please your mom. But you'll have to walk that path alone. She swallowed hard. Are you with someone? Bradley considered not answering. I'm seeing someone. It's early, but she's a woman who knows who she is, has her own opinions, doesn't need outside approval. It's refreshing. Samantha nodded, visibly pained but also accepting. I'm happy for you. You deserve to be happy. Bradley put money on the counter. Take care of yourself, Samantha. And maybe consider cutting back on contact with your mom. She clearly doesn't have your best interest at heart. He walked out without looking back, the weight he'd carried for months finally dissolving. Outside, the sun shone bright in a blue sky. He breathed deeply and headed for his car. He had a dinner date with a smart woman he'd met at a work event. On the way, he passed the bookstore where he'd met Samantha years ago. He slowed for a moment, remembering that Saturday, her shy smile, that beginning full of promise. But the memories didn't hurt anymore. They were just stories of who he'd been, chapters closed in a book that kept being written. He kept walking, leaving the past exactly where it belonged. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.